Welcome to the video, guys. I've got a mock draft here today because the draft is coming up in less than a week. It's a few days away. It's come up pretty quickly, so I'm going to do a nice little mock draft because they're always fun to do, and we're just going to get straight into it. Basically, I've got it ready set up here. We're just going to do the first round, and I'm not going to have any trades, so it's just stick and pick where the teams are. They're going to draft a player, and yeah, we're just going to get stuck in straight away with the first pick of the draft, the Carolina Panthers. Now this could go one of two ways really. It's between Bryce Young, who's up the top there, and CJ Stroud, and both quarterbacks. It's really 50-50 view. A lot of people viewing this. Obviously both quarterbacks could be superstars of the league. Bryce Young having won a Heisman, and CJ Stroud being viewed as a very consistent, not necessarily a higher ceiling, but a very consistent quarterback that can bring consistent play. And with that number one pick, I am going to lean towards CJ Stroud going to the Panthers. As I said, it's a 50-50. It could go either way. Bryce Young is obviously a very good play in his own right, and I'm going to have the Texans at 2 taking him. The thing with Stroud, as I said, I think he's got that ability to be a top 15 quarterback right off the bat as soon as he enters the league. Not saying Bryce Young can't, but I think he's that consistent guy. You saw his tape against Georgia in that game. It was unbelievable. He did everything he could himself to try and edge his team over the line. And then the other thing with the Texans, this sort of maybe works out for them in a way, because just recently it's popped up that they might not be interested in taking CJ Stroud. So if he's not there on the board for him, like I've put them now, they might not be interested because CJ Stroud actually has the same manager as Deshaun Watson. Obviously, previously of the Houston Texans, Watson was, and we all know what happened there. So there's apparently a bit of word coming out that Texans might not be interested in CJ Stroud for that reason. But I'm not really taking that into account as to why I've gone Stroud 1 and Bryce Young 2. Which takes us to the third pick. Third pick, my Arizona Cardinals. And this is an obvious trade down spot, but for the sake of this, we won't be doing any trades, so we will be picking Will Anderson Jr., who is arguably the best player in the draft regardless of position. This is a guy that a team, whoever picks him, hopefully my Cardinals to be honest, they should be able to hang their hat on right from the get-go as a player that generational sort of edge rusher in a way, because he's that good, coming out of Alabama. Moving on to the number 4 pick, we got the Colts, and the Colts need a quarterback quite clearly, and they could trade up. They could end up trading up just to get their guy. Who knows? But they're sitting at 4 here, and really it's out of 2 people. You've got Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, 2 very different quarterback prospects. You've got Will Levis, who's sort of viewed as a guy who's only got that big strong arm and not someone that is deserving to go this high, but I think he can definitely do a job in the NFL. Whether that's good enough to be warranting a high pick like this, who knows. And then on the other hand, Anthony Richardson, a lot of people also don't think he should be going this high because he's purely viewed as a physical athlete, not necessarily a guy that's got good quarterback tape. And for Richardson's sake, I think he wasn't helped by necessarily the players around him, as well as maybe the schemes as well. But I'm not going to take Richardson. I'm going to go Will Levis here for the Colts. I think he fits their mold more as well, to be honest. I don't really see them taking an Anthony Richardson type quarterback, to be honest. That's my main reason for that pick. And we'll get to where Richardson goes in a bit, because with the Seattle Seahawks, a lot of people taking quarterback here as well. I just don't see it happening given the fact, I know Geno Smith is getting on, but he's just been given a 3-year deal, I believe. Pretty hefty one at that, so I don't think they're going to take quarterback this year necessarily. In this spot, I'm going to take Tyree Wilson. Edge rusher. He's also a guy, he's listed at 6'6", I believe. Yeah, 6'6". So during his time at Texas Tech, I think he also moved inside as well as an edge rusher because of his size. So that sort of versatility, the Seahawks need anyone they can get really on the defensive line. So we'll go with Tyree Wilson there. And then we move to the Lions. And so Jalen Carter was a potential pick higher up the draft, potential number 1 at some stage as well. But that off-field stuff has dropped him down boards. But I don't think he's going to drop that far, and I've got the Lions taking him here because they're also another team that need that interior defensive lineman. They've got Houston and Hutchinson from the last draft as those edge rushers. They really need to shore up the run defense because that's something they struggled with big time last year, and Jalen Carter could be an absolute monster for them. Moving on to the 7th pick with the Raiders. This is another team that they need a quarterback, and I see this as a very likely Anthony Richardson spot, who is the player I'm going to take here. As we said, very athletically gifted. We saw that in the draft combine. That sort of has risen his stocks, and I think he can be a success in the NFL, to be honest. There's a lot of question marks over his quarterback ability, which is ultimately what he needs to do well, but I think under the right guidance he can show that he's not just an athlete, really. And then we move to another potential quarterback spot, but in this scenario, I mean, there's talk of Hendon Hooker potentially going very high, which I just don't see happening. So I'm not going to take a quarterback here. And instead, you got to look at the defense, I think, for the Falcons. They've got a big need here, and there's a lot of options. You've got cornerbacks on the board. They did just trade for Jeff Okudah, I believe, from the Lions not long ago. So they've made improvements there. So I'm probably going to lean towards an edge rusher. And this is a guy that potentially could be a reach in some eyes, and it's Lucas Van Ness. He was listed a bit down the board on this particular website, but Lucas Van Ness is a genuine beast. His nickname is Hercules for good reason, because he's just massive, looks like him. He's a player, he's listed at edge, but he's another one that could move inside more because of his size. And I think at 8, while it's maybe viewed as a bit of a reach, I honestly think he could be one of the best rushers in this class. And so I've got the Falcons taking Lucas Van Ness here. Next, we've got the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears, it's more than likely, depending on what happens, more than likely they're taking a tackle here because they need to protect Justin Fields, especially the way he plays. And for me, it's between Skoronski out of Northwestern, and then a bit further down here, Paris Johnson Jr., Ohio State, obviously teammate of Justin Fields himself. And Skoronski's largely considered, I think, I mean, depending on who you ask, the best tackle in the class. And he could more than likely go here, but I'm actually going to take Paris Johnson Jr. And it's for the reason that the thing with Peter Skoronski is his arm length, his arm span is not as long as other tackles, and for the way that they play the Chicago Bears, there's going to be a lot of outside run with Fields and the like. So I think Paris Johnson Jr. has showed on his film that he's capable of fitting into this seamlessly, I reckon, compared to a Skoronski. At the same time, Skoronski here would be perfectly fine because there's that transition to guard potentially. It's just whether or not you want to take that as high as 9. But either, it could go either way for this pick. Then at 10, the Philadelphia Eagles, who are already strong in their own right. And for a long time, it was cornerback, I think. But they have also signed, they managed to re-sign both Darius Slay and James Bradbury. I'm still going to go cornerback here, and Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez are the two highly touted corners. Two very different corners as well. Christian Gonzalez, you've got that bigger body, whereas Devin Witherspoon is more akin to a slot corner. He's a smaller guy, hits very hard though. So another one that could go either way in a sense, but I'm going to have them taking Christian Gonzalez because obviously they did get Bradbury and Slay back, but taking a cornerback here, one as good as these two at this position for the future, it's really a no-brainer in a sense. So yeah, Christian Gonzalez there out of Oregon. With the 11th pick, Tennessee Titans. There's been more recent potential trade down for this team. Because we're sticking and picking, they have to take a wide receiver here, and it's got to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. Pretty much touted as the best wide receiver in the class out of Ohio State. He's a guy that can play that slot role perfectly. They need weapons on the offense. There's recent talks of Derrick Henry potentially getting traded to the Eagles, I think I saw today. So Tennessee are a team that they need as many weapons on offense as they can get, especially if they lose a player like Derrick Henry. Moving on to the Houston Texans. So this is their second pick. Obviously Bryce Young going number 2. And for me, there's a lot of different routes they could go. So it's sort of a tough one in a sense. But I think picking Bryce Young, or whoever they pick at quarterback, because I think it has to be a quarterback that they take. I think they need to give whoever comes in a weapon to work with, and it's got to be a wide receiver really, which is one of their needs as well. They don't really have that bona fide one on the roster really, and I think Quentin Johnston could be that guy out of TCU. He's a big guy. Probably doesn't play as physical as he could. That's something he could maybe improve on. There's questions on his drops, I think, and maybe at 12 this could be seen as a reach as well. I think he's dropped down draft boards a little bit, maybe towards around the late teens, the early 20s. But I think the Texans need to bring someone in that's a weapon to help their new rookie quarterback and develop along with them really. And that's Quentin Johnston for me, who I think could be a very dominant number 1 wide receiver in this league. So now we move to the 13th pick, and it's Pete Skoronski. The Jets need a tackle. Paris Johnson Jr. is off the board, so without a doubt they'll be taking Peter Skoronski here if he's there. I think it's got to be a tackle, whoever's there. I think they'll take. Very simple. That's pretty much it. Onto the 14th pick, you've got the Patriots, and this one is an interesting spot because the Patriots are a team that you can never really predict what they're going to do. But having them here at 14, I think they need a guy, a DB that can help them for their defense, and Devin Witherspoon is here, who's a very highly touted guy. He's dropped to 14 to them, so I think it's a no-brainer if he's there. Can play in the slot, can play on the outside. Yeah, he could do a very good job for the Patriots. On to 15 with the Packers. The Packers, there's a lot of different areas that they could go again. And depending, who knows what's happening with Rodgers, this could be a situation where it's a trade on draft day to the Jets potentially. The Jets could give up a first round pick or whatever their offer is. And if Rodgers does end up leaving, I think they could honestly take a weapon on offense, which is very rare under Rodgers, but as soon as he leaves, that's exactly what they could take. And I think it might be one of the two tight ends who are pretty highly touted. You got Dalton Kincaid here, and a little bit further down, where is he? Have I missed him? No, there he is. Michael Mayer. Those two tight ends are very highly touted, and if it weren't for the strength in other areas, I think a lot of people would be taking them higher than their average draft positions here. And, you know, do I feel strongly about one or the other? Not really. I think Michael Mayer, I'm going to go for the sake of it this time around, is a guy that can provide very good blocking as well as receiving in the middle of the field. So Michael Mayer to the Green Bay Packers, potentially after Aaron Rodgers is left, who has made it known how much he wanted wide receivers or just offensive talent, offensive first round talent, but never really got it while he was there. Well, he's still there now, but who knows. Then we move to the 16th pick, Washington Commanders. I think this is a Brian Branch spot, and a perfect one at that. He's listed at safety, but can play. He's more of a very versatile player and can play in the slot as a cornerback. So that versatility is a very big strength of his. And I think Washington need a lot of help for the DBs, because they're obviously the defensive line, one of the strongest in the league, but it's the defensive backs that have let them down over recent seasons. So Brian Branch here at 16. Then we go to the Steelers and Joey Porter Jr., cornerback. Obviously, I think his dad played there, so it's really fitting that if he falls to the Steelers here, which he has, and I feel like they'll take him if he is there. Very good cornerback in his own right, and something that the Steelers could, like a position they definitely can improve upon going into the season. Now with the 18th pick, you've got Detroit's second pick after we took Jalen Carter at 6 for them. And this is a position, who do I have? Done a little bit of prep. Yes. The other tight end, Dalton Kincaid. They lost, what's his name? To the Vikings. TJ Hawkinson. They lost TJ Hawkinson. I completely blanked on his name there. So I think they need a player that can help Amon-Ra St. Brown on the offense. They need more weapons. As good as St. Brown is, it's an area of improvement for the line. So at 18 there, finding someone that they can help St. Brown with, and in this case, Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah, I think is a very good pick. Moving on to 19 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a team that need help everywhere really. They're an aging roster. They've lost players. I think it will be a defensive pick though. So whether that's a defensive interior lineman like Kalijah Cansey, potentially, but I think they need pressure off the edge, and there's a few here. You've got Nolan Smith, who's highly touted given how well he did in the combine. Just a physical beast and could be anything. You've got Brian Brzee, as I said, Kalijah Cansey. There's a lot of options they could go here, but I'm going to take Myles Murphy out of Clemson, edge rusher. This is a massive bloke. I think he's listed 6'5". Yep, 6'5". Massive bloke, so could also transition more inside for the Bucs, but they need some pressure off the edge, especially because they're aging as well. They've still got guys like Vita Vea and Levante David, all these players, but they're getting on a bit, so they need to look for replacements, and Myles Murphy there at 19. Then we move to the second pick for the Seattle Seahawks, who I had taking Tyree Wilson, and I think they're going to go double down on defense because it's a big area of need, and Kalijah Cansey is sitting there, highly rated coming out of Pittsburgh. They just need to shore up the defensive line. Simple as that. Elijah Cansey at 20 there could be a great pick. And then we move past the Miami Dolphins because they don't have a pick, and onto the 21st pick with the Chargers. And the Chargers here, few wide receivers on the board. I think they need more weapons, and I got them taking Jordan Addison because this guy has got some serious speed, which is what they need. They've got great wide receivers in Mike Williams. He's a guy on the outside, just a physical beast. Contested catches, you've got Keenan Allen in the slot, great route runner. They need genuine speed, and with Jordan Addison, I think they can get that. 22, Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, another team that could potentially go one way with a receiver, or they could go the defensive route, and I think that's what they'll do. And there's a few options here still on the board. You've got cornerback, you've got edge, you've got defensive interior, Brian Brzee. There's a few options, and that's who exactly I'm going to take, Brian Brzee. This guy could potentially be viewed down the track as, if we do a redraft, he could potentially be a top 10 guy. He's very highly touted. Brian Brzee, very consistent performer, is what you get with him. And the Ravens, they lost Calais Campbell, so the defense is an area of need, edge, interior. So Brian Brzee could be a perfect fit there. Onto the Vikings, and the Vikings, I'm just going to straight away. Cornerback, Deontay Banks. They need cornerback help. They've really struggled. It's an area where they've struggled for a while now. Patrick Peterson was a good fit in his twilight of his career, but he's now moved to the Steelers. They brought in Byron Murphy from the Cardinals, but they still just need to add to that cornerback room, and Deontay Banks could be a great fit. With the Jaguars at 24, there's a lot of tackles on the board, but I'm going to have them taking a guard, Cyrus Torrence. He's out of Florida, so that fits even better. So some of these tackles could translate to a guard, but you've got a guy who is listed as a guard, so the fit is honestly perfect. And we're just going to move on to 25 with the New York Giants. New York Giants are a team that they need offensive weapons, and there's a few on the board here. You've still got Zay Flowers sitting there. You've got Bijan Robinson, the running back. We haven't talked about him, but I don't think this is the spot where he's going to be taken. And then further down the board, you've got Josh Downs. And that's exactly who I'm going to take. He's listed here as the 40th ranked player, but Josh Downs, I think, could be a big sleeper during this draft. I don't necessarily think he will get into the first round, but I think his talent is good enough to warrant a first round pick. And this is 25th, so it's later on. But Josh Downs, I think, could be a very, very highly rated receiver when we look a year, two down the line at the receiver class. And so, as I said, Giants, they need weapons. And yeah, I've got them taking Josh Downs. Very quick, very slot receiver, great feet. Yeah, perfect pick here. Now with the 26th pick, the Cowboys. And the Cowboys, this is where I'm going to have them taking Bijan Robinson. The running back out of Texas, he's had a phenomenal couple of seasons. I think I saw recently he had the most amount of missed tackles, as in players missing tackles on him, out of anyone coming out of college, 104 or something. So it's very widely known that this is the running back of this class, and this is the guy that can fit straight into an offense and produce right from the get-go. And the Dallas Cowboys losing Ezekiel Elliott while getting rid of him, really. Still got Tony Pollard, but that 1-2 punch could be very, very strong for the Cowboys. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills, it's unfortunate for them that a lot of these offensive weapons have fallen, and I think that's exactly what they need. It's not listed here as their needs, but I'm going to have them taking Zay Flowers out of Boston College, because I think they need extra help for Stephon Diggs. They haven't had consistency from the other wide receivers on their roster. So I think they need to take someone that can play that slot role like Zay Flowers and produce outside of Diggs. And moving on to 28th pick of the draft with the Bengals. And I think this, for some reason, this name just looks like he'll be a Bengal, and it's Emmanuel Forbes. They've lost a couple of defensive backs through free agency, so they need replacements really. And whether or not Forbes is a consistent starter, who knows? But I think this is a great spot for him. I think this is a team that needs the help on the outside, given who they've lost in free agency. So Broderick Jones is the pick for the Saints. I think he can move into guard, to be honest. So not stoked on the pick, just because the team for me is very difficult to find an avenue that they'll go down. But Broderick Jones out of Georgia, winning team. He can translate. He can either be a tackle or a guard. So that's who we'll go with. On to the 30th pick of the draft with the Eagles, the penultimate pick. So they had Christian Gonzalez. We had Christian Gonzalez, cornerback, at 10. And the way the board has fallen here, Nolan Smith is sticking out like a sore thumb, especially because that's exactly the type of player they like to take. Edge rushers, defensive linemen, and Georgia players at that, Nakobe Dean and the big fella, Jordan Davis, I believe, both last year from Georgia. But I'm going to have them taking Darnell Wright. He's sitting there from Tennessee. It's not necessarily a need right now, but they've got the likes of like Lane Johnson, Kelsey. These are aging players, and if you can bring him in and have them basically be shooters to Darnell Wright, you've got a guy that can slot in seamlessly maybe the year after and just be an absolute beast wherever along the line he plays. And then with the last pick of the draft, Kansas City Chiefs. And the fact that Nolan Smith has slid this much, I'm just looking at the rest, he's slid this much and he's just fallen into the lap of the Chiefs. Don't know how happy I am about that, considering all the talk surrounding. We'll just get the draft up there. Yeah, the talk surrounding Nolan Smith, he's very highly touted, and I think there'll be a team out there that just loves the prospect of his physical attributes. He showed up at the draft massively with his speed, his power, his vertical, and showed how much of a project he could potentially be and turn into. So whether Nolan Smith falls this far, I don't know if that's going to happen. So basically, in summary, with the end of the draft, not super stoked about the way it's fallen, but this is the draft. We got CJ Stroud, number 1, all the way down to Nolan Smith at 31. So let me know what you think. This is a very fun activity, the mock drafts, and the actual draft is coming up very soon. So let me know if my picks were absolute garbage, or you actually think that some of them could generally happen. But yeah, give us a like, subscribe if you're enjoying the videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.